This movie is recorded during the maiden flight, and as you already saw in the description, the crash of my new FPV plane. Now, the plane itself isn't super sexy. It's an FMS Easy Trainer. It's a tried and tested model, and it's the first model for a lot of people. I went through a couple of those when I was just starting out in the RC plane hobby, and I feel that my proficiency level has passed the FMS Easy Trainer, but it was still a good platform for a FPV project, because then you can sort of fly it hands off and focus on enjoying the view and all that stuff instead of actually flying the plane. I'm flying with a Spectrum radio, but I'm not using the Spectrum 2.4 gigahertz link to control the plane. I'm just using it as a controller, and then the control link is actually a long-range system from Immersion RC. And I mounted the LRS system to this ground station stand I have to save me from having to make a bracket to put on the transmitter. I might do that in the future, but for now I used the kind of ground station solution. Okay, this is the moment of truth. Time to see how it launches and flies. That was quite impressive, actually. Granted, this is a very calm day, but this is with the stabilization turned off. This is just how the plane flies right out of the build. So I had a fresh in box FMS Easy Trainer, and I built it especially for this FPV project. And I knew a few tips and tricks from having owned several before that would improve the plane and make it a little more rigid and things like that. But the secret sauce here, of course, is the contents of the plane. It's pretty much fully kitted out. It has a Eagle Tree vector system, and it has a camera system, obviously, for FPV with a nice video transmitter, and it has the ability to record on board as well as transmit live to goggles. It has, obviously, the Eagle Tree Vector is a flight controller with the GPS and all the bells and whistles. Since I'm using the Immersion RC long-range system, I have a cable going from the radio in my hands to the actual transmitter on the stand. So I'm struggling a little bit with this cable, and looking at the video, I see myself looking kind of stupid. But just to kind of quote my high school teacher in dance class, "Now class, listen up. 1, 2, 3, shuffle." I don't have any external sensors connected to the vector, but all the standard stuff is there, like ground speed and elevation and altitude and attitude and distance from home and direction to home and all of that good stuff. One, two, three, shuffle. At this point, I'm feeling confident that the plane flies well, so it's a natural progression to go more into the FPV kind of functions. Now, I'm waiting to fly with the goggles, but I want to try the return to home function. Now it's up to the user what you determine that you want the plane to do exactly once you hit the return to home switch. The way I set up this plane is I hit the switch and it returns to the location that I'm at, and I've set up some parameters for if it's going to climb or descend on its way to where I'm at, and that depends on the terrain and a bunch of safety aspects. But at any rate, it returns to where I'm at, and it starts circling at a determined altitude with a determined bank angle. And it's always exciting to see that work for the first time. Now, this is actually not me twerking to try to stay warm in the cold. It's me trying to visually track the plane that's circling overhead at quite a high rate of speed.
Okay, so this is the big leap of faith. I have to get my hat on, and I'm just gonna trust the autopilot. My heart is beating so fast right now. It's really scary to have this circling overhead, but it works just fine. And I kind of know I can trust it, but it still feels a little weird.
And then as soon as I turn off the return to home, or return to loiter as it's properly called, the plane just resumes normal flight to whatever flight mode I have it set at on the switch that I used to turn off the return to home function. Now at this point I haven't looked in my goggles yet, so I'm not really able to track how much juice I have left in the battery. So I decided to play it safe. Everything's gone really well so far. So all I want to do now is make a big circle and then return from over the forest down to the field where I'm flying and going in for a landing. And unfortunately, that is when disaster strikes.
That was really unfortunate indeed. My beautiful new FPV plane that I was so happy with. I was just gliding it back over the trees. Somehow it dropped the wing really bad. And it was so low over the trees, I didn't have time to catch it. It disappeared in between the trees. I gave it full throttle and I could hear the motor spinning freely. And I was thinking maybe I could kind of plow it out between the trees. Maybe it was between some big trees or something. But I chickened out before it came to view, and then I heard it crash into a tree really hard. And I'm super bummed now. Maybe if I'd stuck on the throttle, it could have climbed enough and I would have caught a glimpse of it again. Who knows? But too late now. It's definitely down. This is going to be a big repair, and that's how things go sometimes. But this is a real bummer, let me tell you. Well, if nothing else, I do have my video goggles here, and I still have a beautiful view of the view outside the plane. So definitely, you know, it's not smashed completely to pieces. The electronics still work somehow, and it's telling me it's 143 meters from here. It's not very far up in the woods. The elevation is 23 meters above where I'm standing. But I'm guessing the bottom of the trees over there are probably 10 meters above me. So if this is correct, it's 13 meters up in the air. I do have the GPS position in my goggles, so if nothing else, I can definitely find it. But I'm bummed out about this. This was a really nice plane. This was the maiden flight. Can you believe it? Now for these goggles, I have a diversity system, meaning it has 2 antennas and it's always picking the best signal. So I'm actually going to unscrew the omni antenna, which means the receiver is always going to choose the directional antenna. And the reason for that is that I want to use the directionality of the goggles to be able to find the plane. So that's not going to work with the omni antenna, because if the directional antenna is pointing away from the plane, giving me a bad image, then the omni is going to take over, and that's going to negate the whole point. Well, that's kind of funny, because there's a jetliner up in the air. And through my goggles, I can see the contrails from the jetliner, meaning I know what direction it's facing. And that direction is that way right there. Okay, so you gotta use whatever clues you have, I guess. Okay, let's go for this. Normally I would bring my radio, but it's such a big contraption with all the gear on it, so I'm just gonna go for a hike first and see what I can do. Normally I bring my snowshoes when I'm flying in this area, but unfortunately I didn't think as far today. I wasn't planning on crashing. Can't wait to see the recording on the plane. I'll bet you anything there's no trail leading to where it's at. Damn it. It should be that way right there. Yeah, it's not bad. Still snow, but it's not as deep.
Kraften får meg til å treffe bakken.
The battery pack I'm using is a very nice battery pack, and it's a 3200 milliamp pack. So going by rule of thumb, I can safely use 2400 milliamps before I'm damaging the pack. And right now I'm at 1600, so I spent 2/3, but that was flying. Of course now it's using 0.6 amps, so that's not too bad. That's just the video transmitter and the idle current of the electronics. This area is kind of roomy actually. I wonder where it went down. It's telling me it's smack in that direction. I should have brought my transmitter anyway. It would be nice to just blip the throttle right now. I'm seeing something white in the tree. I don't want to get my hopes up just yet, because it could just be snow, but I am seeing something. Yeah, there it is. It's in a kind of a dead tree, actually. That's funny. Okay, get ready to see me superhero this fence. I am such a fit young man. This is just so irritating. The opening in the trees, you can see right there, that's where the flying field starts. I was like 5 trees away from it. And here's the result. I'm tired of climbing trees. Oh well. Okay, so I'm walking back to kind of drop my goggles. I don't need those now, and if I'm lucky I can find a ladder, but it's gonna be hell to carry it into the woods here, you know. It's quite dense, but I suppose I'm an optimist at heart, really, and it could be worse. Those are actually moose tracks. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Moose, for making these tracks for me. Here's a riddle. What's the plural of moose? This right there is where it stalled out, and it kind of went down right behind the trees there. So it's actually not very far. And here's a little trick I learned. I also have a shopping bag in my car, so I'm going to use that to kind of pick up the pieces. It'll be easier to carry them back with this. And also I'm going to disassemble my little speaker stand that I use for ground station duties, because that's going to work as a kind of a poking pole to see if I can get the plane out if I can't quite reach high enough. It's not actually so bad. I mean, especially compared to my last crash. So I think it'll be okay. I might have to get a ladder. I hope I don't. Ouch, that sound hurt. Okay, let's see how we did. That's not good. What the hell was that? I guess this thing is thinking it's still in the air because the elevation is higher than when I started, but still, that's dangerous. Let's unplug this. Okay, say bye-bye. I guess the conclusion is, if you're gonna crash, this is how you should do it. That's gonna repair just fine.
Here are a few more shots showing what happened exactly as the plane went down. Unfortunately, due to a corrupt memory card, I don't have any recordings of the OSD information that I saw in my goggles. It would have been really nice to see some of that, especially the speed of the aircraft as it went down.
So obviously I was super bummed out when my plane crashed on the maiden flight, and I was very happy with the plane until it tip stalled suddenly. I guess it's the wing loading is a bit too high for what it's intended to be used for. But anyway, I've glued up the parts that broke, and it's looking promising. It wasn't all that bad. So today I am kind of in a hurry because of work, so I'm just going to quickly get a quick run in here out on this wonderful field. And the daylight is just barely still holding out for another half hour maybe. And I'm optimistic, this should be good.
As I made this flight, I still hadn't figured out that the reason my goggles weren't recording properly was a corrupt memory card. So again, I don't have any OSD information recorded from this flight either. But I do have a recollection of some of the numbers I kept seeing, and also I have a few hard numbers, like I know how much power I put back in the battery pack as I charged it after the flight. And I can also calculate how long the flight was in minutes by looking at the counters on my various cameras. So for those that are kind of geeky about numbers, like myself, I have deducted that the stats for the plane are approximately on a 3200 milliamp pack, while not depleting it a lot at all. I can easily get over 20 minutes of flight time, and that will net me about 18 to 20 kilometers of distance.
Okay, super happy right now that the plane seems to be working just fine.
Also, the plane will maintain a stable attitude and altitude with some margin for error while drawing about 5 amps, and that's quite reasonable. Just as I was finishing up and right before sunset, the sun actually came out from behind the clouds and I got some really nice light to fly in for a few minutes. So I've included a short round trip around this field. It's about 800 or 900 meters long in total, counting both the fields. I'm starting the round trip at 80 meters and then I'm descending as I hit the second field, and as I'm passing the trees on my way back, I'm at the altitude of 40 meters. This is all relative to where I started out.
So I feel like this was really the true maiden, because last time was so disrupted by the accident I had.
I always talk too much. I think this monologue is going to make more sense sped up at 64 times the original speed.
It was really nice to get the plane in the air properly and have a safe landing, and I'm really psyched. This was a good day. Thanks for watching.